Hey everyone, it's Louisa Tunner-Munson from Good Morning Portugal. Carl's other half, I'm also known as Mrs. M. Now, I'm hoping so far you're enjoying these moving stories, and this week I've got another, I think, fantastic moving story where I have a lovely conversation with our good friend Lonny McLaughlin. Now, Lonny, if you don't already know, is somebody who works in personal transformation. He's somebody with over 30 years of experience of growth, looking at possibilities. He's awesome. Now, rather than me ad lib and, make something up based on my own opinion, I wanted to take some information directly from his LinkedIn page. So Lonny is somebody who puts his calling as he wants to work to help people love their lives. I mean, how fantastic is that, eh? So he's got consulting, coaching experience working with individuals, teams, and groups. He collaborates to dramatically elevate personal, relationship, and professional growth opportunities. And I think he's worked with thousands of people around the world, which is really pretty incredible. Now, somebody with that kind of experience, you'd imagine them to have a pretty compelling moving story, right? So let's bring him on now and have a listen in. I really do think you're going to enjoy this. I did this a good few weeks ago, and it still warms my heart when I think about it. It's really phenomenal. Hope you enjoy. Let's bring Lonny on now, shall we? So, Lonny, thanks for agreeing to let me interview you today about your migration process. Now, I was really curious about how you first noticed that you might be ready to move to another country or move. What happened in your thinking at that time?
Well, let me see. It was January of whatever year, I don't know, whenever the Biden election happened. I decided to, what year was that?
I don't know. I can't even think it through.
You don't know?
Isn't it 2 years ago? 2019? Is it
2019? 2020.
No, 2020. Yeah. Because we just had the midterms, haven't we? That's halfway through. So
good. Let's see. So January of 2020, I decided to unplug from social media and television and the media because I was settled. I felt safe after the election and the inauguration. I felt safe and it was sort of a surprising thing for me to have this recognition, like, oh my God, I feel safe all of a sudden. What is that about? I was and the realization was, hidden from my view, how anxious and fearful I have been living my life for the last 4 years or so.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, this is, Louisa, my life's about empowering people and having people have lives that they love. And in that awareness, I realized, oh, I don't love my life. If I've got all that anxiety and fear in the background, hidden from my view, there's a big impact on my experience of myself and experience of my life. So I just checked out and started doing kind of an inward journey and journaling every day and filling my time up with writing and things that I loved and appreciated, like art and music. And then I don't remember. Oh, yes, in March, after this long time of no media, so a pop-up news article showed up on my phone, and I was irritated because I thought I had stopped all the notifications, and I got a notification about a broadcast about a panel of experts talking about handling gun control in the United States. Are we finally going to handle this issue? Because there was a tragic shooting in Atlanta, and 8 women had been shot, women that worked in spas. So I decided to turn the television on, and I turned the television on, and I saw about 5 minutes into the broadcast, realized, oh, this is the exact same conversation we have every time there's a shooting in the United States. There's nothing different about this. We're never going to handle this. I turned it off and I Googled safest places in the world. Iceland, New Zealand, and Portugal came up third.
Wow.
So I went to YouTube and I looked for walking tours of Porto that were, I didn't want anybody's commentary. I didn't want anybody's opinions. There were videos of people just walking through the streets of Porto. I already knew I didn't want to be in Lisbon because it was a big city, and Porto I knew nothing about. And I just started watching these walking tours of people wandering through the city, hours and hours and hours of them. And then I was doing some other work. I was hanging out with a question called, "What does my soul want?" And in that journey, in that process, I wrote down, my soul wants beauty. My soul wants art. My soul wants kindness and romance.
Wow.
And the romance thing came up kind of like I want a romantic experience of life and living after 5 years of political trauma and drama and horribleness. And I continued to watch those videos, and I started listening to Fado, and I love Fado music and poetry, and my mother was a poet and is a poet, and I have an appreciation of poetry. So I just started getting in touch with those things that I really love and care about, and one day on the YouTube channel, because I'm watching all of stuff about Portugal, your husband Carl's face pops up on my screen that says "Good Morning Portugal," and I turned it on, and I started watching that every night instead of television. I'm now watching "Good Morning Portugal," broadcast several hours later, the recorded version, because I wasn't willing to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning
No,
to
I
watch
don't
your
blame
husband.
you. I wouldn't either.
But I got impacted by Carl. He's charming, as you know, and lovely, and there was something about him that was very kind. And so I sent him an email, and I said just something, I just love your show and I appreciate blah 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 blah. And he sent a message back, something like, "I'd like to talk to you."
Mm.
And I said, "Great, let's do a Zoom call," and we met. And I'd already decided I was moving to Portugal. So when I finally did my meeting with Carl said, "Don't come here as a tourist. I'm going to give you some really good advice." He said, "Come here and live here like you're a citizen for a month, and rent an apartment in a neighborhood, find the grocery store, figure out where you're going to get your laundry done, find out what it feels like to live here before you decide you're moving to Portugal." So I've already decided I'm moving to Portugal. And so I did, and it was during COVID times. Everything was closed, so
Yeah.
I bought a ticket, hoping that they would open up for tourism, and I started my D7 visa process, knowing that they weren't going to open for tourism, but I could at least get my D7 visa and I'd be here by September. And then on July 1st, they opened up tourism, and I had purchased a refundable ticket for July 15th, and rented an apartment.
Mm.
So, my story is like, how did I move here? I jumped in. I just jumped in. I decided I was going to move here. Carl mostly said, "Slow down, see if this is, the right thing for you." And then the lovely day, I rented a car and decided to drive down to Caldas de Dena and meet the two of you. And
Yeah, that was an amazing day. Lovely and warm and
beautiful. I haven't shared this with you, but that day, Carl and I and your daughter were walking around the garden and looking at the orchard, and Carl got a phone call or something, had to dash off for a minute. And I was there with your daughter, and she's showing me flowers and saying the colors.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, "Oh." So I said, "What color is this?" And she said, "Purple." And I said, what color is this? And she stopped for a minute and she said, purple. I said, no, that one's lavender. And this one's purple. And I picked the two flowers up so she could see the difference. And she just smiled. So like she discovered something and there was this lovely connection. And then she went running, she ran off very excited. And then I just was standing there in the orchard. And all of a sudden I remembered being in an orchard in Italy 30 years ago by myself, deciding I'm going to live in Europe someday.
Yeah.
And I had totally forgotten about it. So in one way, I decided 30 years ago I was going to live in Europe.
Yeah.
And then rediscovered it in this journey I was on. So that's, that's kind of how I wound up here.
Wow. I love that.
I moved here officially on November 10th. So I just literally 3 days ago celebrated my 1-year anniversary of moving to Portugal. And
congratulations.
Yeah. It's a serendipitous time of my life. Today would have been my mother and father's wedding anniversary. And my birthday is November 17th, next Thursday.
That's our son's birthday as well.
I turned 68.
Wow.
And it was the day I met Sandra Correa, the fado singer, in an amazing fado house here in Villanova de Gaia. So that was my birthday present to myself. So I love this time of year.
Well, may I wish you a happy birthday ahead of time. And I will remember on the day. So it's
You're not supposed to do that in Portugal. You're not supposed to do that in Portugal. It's bad luck to wish it.
Okay, well, let me just take that back.
It's okay. Wow. I'm American, so I don't have it now.
I absolutely love your approach there, Lonny, because what I was hearing all the way through that was your question, what does my soul want?
Yeah.
And, when you were describing how you were looking, like watching videos of just what's going on in the streets, like these street views, you were really, I'm guessing, just really sort of getting a feel for the atmosphere and the energy. And you don't necessarily do that when you're just watching a video that somebody's narrating or curating for you.
I have a lifetime of other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And I had spent 5 years of listening to them broadcast feverishly 24 hours a day. And I was just like, you know what? I don't have a lot of respect for opinions, including my own. I think they're a little more philosophical than you're probably interested in, but I just don't think they're empowering. So that
might be for another conversation, because I do like your philosophical thinkings. I love
the beauty, though. I love the art. I love the architecture. I love the tiles. I love the beauty. Yeah. The beauty of the city was so compelling. And,
Yeah, and there is a kindness, I think, with the tiles and the way things look. People, even when they're not cared for, I think they're appreciated somehow. Yeah. And it's a very romantic look. I absolutely love that. And I love that you just decided to come out and see what it was like. And I'm quite surprised that Carl was advising you to slow down and really experience it, because, he's normally like, come on then, let's hurry up. So,
I think he was more committed than I have a real look, and not just come here and go to art museums and go be a tourist. This is a big deal. You're coming here to start a new life. It was very respectful, and I appreciated his thoughtfulness.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely. And I do know him to be super thoughtful too. How was it for you, the process of wrapping up your life in the US? How did you go about that? Did you decide to close it down? Did you keep two lives running alongside each other?
Good question. I'm still in transition, actually. I kept my apartment in the States. I have a business in the States that I'm in the process of turning over to employees who've worked for me for 30 some years. And so I've been in transition, supporting them and working with them, over Zoom, and then I go back about every 4 months and work there for a bit and visit my mother.
Yeah.
So I kept my apartment there from November, about 6 months. I kept my apartment there, and I had an apartment here, so I was going back and forth. And it's what I needed to do for myself. I didn't want a big disruption. I didn't want a big drama. It's what I I was really listening to myself and listening to my body and what's going to take care of me, what's going to be nurturing. Okay, don't move anything. Just find an apartment that's furnished that you really love. And then you have your home here that you love, and you'll have a place that you love when you come here, and you have a place that you love when you're there, and get used to going back and forth, and don't be hard on yourself. As I spent 30 years traveling all over the world. So I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life. So this chapter of my life is about kindness and self-care and loving my life and seeing to it that the people around me love their life. And it would be kind of hypocritical to be hard on myself and make the transition a brutal one and a forceful one. And it's like, oh, I got to go and do something, because I didn't come here to get away from anything. I didn't come here because I don't love the US. I didn't come here to get away from anything. I really didn't. I came here for something. I came here because I found what I came here for. I came here for the kindness. I came here for the beauty. And I came here for the history. So,
That's lovely. What I'm hearing as well is serenity in your decision. It just sounds really, really kind to yourself. I love what you're saying, that you know that you weren't running, from something. With a lot of the people I've been speaking to, one of the decisions that lots of people have been making is like moving away from something they don't want or running from it. Whereas it sounds like you already had a life that you were enjoying and you wanted a greater level of kindness and beauty and appreciation and
well, I'm out to discover. I'm out to discover. And you know me well enough to know that's sort of been the theme of my life. I'm always looking to discover something new. I really am. I don't do anything halfway. I'm like all in when I do something. It's all in, I created. I really did create, inventing a new life for myself and inventing myself. Mm. And part of that process was the realization that how much I'm associated with my past, my business, my prior career. Everyone knows me a certain way, and I wanted to go somewhere where I knew no one. Mm. And no one knew me, and there's no baggage. There's not a familiar object in my environment. I had none of my stuff. I brought very little clothes with me, and I intentionally bought new stuff when I was here because I was really out to discover who am I when I don't have the environment that constantly reminds me who I am and pulls me back into who I used to be. That's a sort of joke. Everybody's laughing at me. I had many people say, "You moving to Portugal?" Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you been there before? No. Do you speak Portuguese? No. Do you have any friends there? No. Do you have any family there? No. Okay, well, why are you moving to Portugal? I said, I'm not sure, and I'll find out in the process. But and every time people ask the questions, that got more real to me, how much us as human beings do things because of something rather than for no reason, like just for no reason. The worst thing that could happen is I moved here and I hated it and I left.
Yeah.
Or I moved here and I loved it and I left. Mm. That's okay too. I have some expats that just move back.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
I love it here.
lots of people do move over, and then later move back. There's lots and lots of toing and froing. I love what you were saying about discovery and how you really made it a blind experience for yourself, so that you could really immerse yourself. What have you discovered about yourself in this first year that you didn't already know?
That's a great question. Let me just look for a second. Well, one thing I would not have said a year ago is I discovered that I'm an introvert. And that's so shocking to me. And I actually, went online, started reading about introverts, and I talked to a friend of mine, a dear friend who's a psychologist, and I said, what is this introvert extrovert thing? And she said, well, you're definitely an introvert. I said, what? With my life and my career? And I said, oh, no, it has nothing to do with what you think. So that was great. I mean, I really do love time alone, and I like to write, and I enjoy solitude and being alone. It's my way of centering myself and getting connected to what I care about and things that I think you can't meditate well with a whole bunch of people around.
I struggle with that too.
So, I have certain practices that I appreciate, and they're a rich part of my life. I have a rich inner life, and what a perfect place to be when you're not distracted by the conversations that are going on around you, because I don't understand anything anybody's saying. So I could be on the metro and it's not a thing.
Yeah.
Unlike the metro in the US, the metro here is quiet. People aren't, there's not no, it's just they're there and they're going from one place to another. People are very respectful of each other's privacy and space. And many of the Portuguese people that I meet here, I would say, are introverted and quiet and close to the vest. So that's one of the things I've discovered is that, and the other thing that I am surprised by is how much I love fado music and poetry. And my mom's writes poetry, and I've always made fun of her poetry, I'm embarrassed to say, because it's not my stuff. I don't like it's kind of silly rhyming things, and she's lovely. She's an amazing person and very sort of spiritual in her own right, but I've made fun of her poetry. But I love poetry, and I rediscovered poetry since I've been here, and now I'm feverishly reading the new autobiography about Pessoa, Fernando Pessoa. So I've discovered things that I love and had forgotten about because I've got the time. I've got the time to look and rediscover. Like, oh yeah, I discovered an amazing Portuguese painter that I knew nothing about in a little museum in Amarante. And so, I don't know. What I'm finding out is that there's dimensions of myself that I haven't really had the time to express or explore.
And it sounds like you've given yourself a lot of time to have realizations about where you might be going and how you might fill your life.
Well, I've watched people since being here. I've met many expats here, immigrants here. Most of the ones I know are from the US or the UK, but I've watched the spaces they go through. And, it's not unlike the 7 stages of grief. I've watched people go through these spaces, and I try to be a partner, not a watch out. It's not my job to interrupt somebody's process, but you can't move here with an intention of living here and not disrupt yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you're physicality or your household or all that. Yes, there's all that. And then all that stuff's in a certain way a big pain in the ass. But almost nobody confronts, in my view, what are they coming here for? Really, what are you coming here for? And I've watched people bump into themselves and not like what they discovered. Like, oh shit! I forget who said it. Who was saying, "Wherever you go, there you are."
Yeah,
you know?
I suspect most people have had that oh shit moment, because there's some amusement and novelty, isn't there, about going to a new place and you're discovering all these nice new flavors and smells and great experiences. And then inevitably we all have those moments where things go tits up and things go wrong, or, we lose something, or, we lose our composure for a moment, or we get ill. There's always going to be life happening around us.
Yeah.
And, what I've observed and from my own experience is it can be really lonely doing that in another country when you don't have your usual support systems around you.
Well, unlike most people, I think loneliness is a really amazing thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know about, you're British, but most of the people I know are Americans, and we are oriented around anything but loneliness. I mean, it's anything to assuage whatever that confront is, the unknown.
Yeah.
Being like, what is that? What's beyond just the fear of being alone? What is that? How come I'm avoiding loneliness at all costs? And I watch people drink too much. I watch people. I see people they moved here to retire and start a new life, and they're drinking. We joke about it, but I get a message from my friend, "Hey, come join me. We're day drinking again." Like, no.
Yeah.
Every day drinking, or drinking and smoking weed and doing drugs. They've never done drugs before, and they're like they're in high school again. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, I don't have any judgments about anybody's behavior at all. None. And I love that they're having a great time. But I've also watched people go through those spaces, and then when all that's done, there's still work to do. Like you can't move here and not have it transform your life.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, one thing I've noticed is, because I've lived in a few countries, is that I have a different identity in each country. Not to say that, I'm somebody with like all these different aliases, but like when you speak another language, each language has its own tone, it has its own resonance, it has its own way of expressing itself. And as you're learning that, I've noticed that my voice has changed. That when I start to express myself in French, for instance, my voice is much lower rather than higher, and you dress differently, in a different culture. When there's a different temperature, you might wear different colors, different types of materials, and all of these things have a knock-on effect on how you think of your identity.
Yeah.
So I noticed lots of shifts, and of course,
that's so interesting. That's so funny. The reason I'm chuckling to myself, I was going to, here in the north, it's a little cooler, and especially this time of year. And I was getting ready to go to this lovely father house that I love, and I was in the elevator, and I looked at myself in the elevator, and I started laughing because I was dressed in black. I had a black turtleneck on and black pants and a black coat and a scarf. I just started chuckling. I was like, oh my God, you look like a guy who hangs out in father houses.
Exactly.
It was so funny. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't have picked the more perfect costume. It was just really entertaining.
Like, how did you look before you arrived here?
Well, I don't know. I know. I just, I would wear mostly button shirts and I don't think, just middle of the road sort of old man clothes, I suppose. I don't know. But it was funny. It was sort of fashionable and dapper in a certain way. I was like, okay, this is really funny. I was laughing at myself and my new, whatever this new me is.
Yeah.
But I do chuckle. I laugh a lot at myself. I mean, I really am humored by my own absurdity. Finding myself trying to speak Portuguese and make a fool of myself, which I'm more willing to do now than I ever have been.
Yeah, and I think that really helps, doesn't it, when you're learning a new language and making errors left, right, and center. I mean, we have to throw ourselves into it. Definitely. How did you come to settle in Porto? Like, did you ever move around? I mean, I didn't find out. Like, how did you do a tour?
No, I'd already decided to live in Porto for at least a year. I decided I was going to live in Porto for at least a year. And I, for whatever reason, the tours that I saw were people walking through Porto.
Yeah.
Now, it could have easily been through neighborhoods like Alfama, then I probably would have moved to Alfama. But there was just something about Porto. And I said, okay, I'm going to live there. I'm going to live there for a year, and that'll be my base camp. And then I'll figure out where I'm going to go.
Mm.
And Carl recommended that I, don't decide anywhere yet.
Yeah.
So I had a base camp, but I haven't purchased a property yet. I've looked and still haven't decided. I have a lovely apartment, which I appreciate. So central and great, across the street from the metro. I can go anywhere. It's really lovely.
Yeah. So when you arrived then and you put your key in the door for the first time and you went into your apartment, what was that like for you?
The first thing I did was I cried. I feel like crying just remembering it. I'm kind of a sentimental, that's one of the things I discovered about myself, is how much more of an emotional, sentimental person than I have ever known myself to be. And how much of my life I suppressed being that sensitive, emotional person and being embarrassed by it, frankly. And so and I remember that night, and it was rainy, and I was walking around. I went and had a lovely dinner at a great restaurant, little Portuguese, not a tourist place, a really great local Portuguese restaurant filled with local Portuguese people. And someone recommended that I go, and had a great meal and great interaction with the two servers. And one of the things I love about being alone in Portugal is the Portuguese go out of their way to sit and talk to you and make sure that you're welcome, because it's so weird for them, I think, for someone to go out to dinner alone. I don't know if they feel sorry for me or it's their job to entertain me or something, but I love those nights. And I remember I was there till the restaurant closed, and then we ended up just drinking wine and talking for a long time. And I was walking through Porto, and there was no one on the street. Mm-hmm. And this beautiful mist, and I came around a corner, and the mist around the street lights and the reflection of the street lamps on the wet calçada Português, the reflection. And I remember just being like, oh my God. And I said out loud, "You're here."
Yes.
You're here.
You're here.
And it was, I was present, and I was in this place, and I was in myself, and I was whole and in love with my life and the miracle of life. I mean, those are woo-woo moments.
Mm.
And I've had one of those every day, every single day I've been here. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not moved to tears by the life I get to live and the people I get to meet. And, I love you and Carl so much. From that first day we hung out together, just, even my mother says, "You're so different since you moved to Portugal." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, my mother, when I was told I was moving here, she said, "You're not allowed to move to Portugal till I die, till after I'm dead."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Ma, you're going to live to be 100. I'm not going to wait till I'm 80 to move to Portugal. I'm not doing that. I want to start a new life."
Yes.
And now she says, you're better that you live there." I said, "What's different?" She said, "You're kinder."
Wow, that's nice, isn't it? That's so
My
nice.
own mother, yeah, she ought to know.
Yeah. How do you manage your relationship with your mum being so far away from her?
Oh, my new thing now. My mom's hard of hearing, so the telephone doesn't work for her. She's not super tech savvy, although she's pretty good, but she loves email. But she's good with text. I send text messages. But my new thing is I record a video and I email it to her. And
Wow.
she loves that. So, like last night I took a beautiful video of the sunset. And I said, "This is a sunset tonight." The day before yesterday, I woke up about 6:30 or so, and the sun was coming up. I can't see the sunrise from where I am. I can see the sunsets from my apartment, but the sunrise was just this beautiful pink sky. So I took a picture of the panorama of the sky. And I said, "This is what I'm waking up to this morning. I'm just sending this to wish you good morning. Good morning from Portugal." So it's just a brief, it's just like a little thing, pictures, a moment, just I'm sharing those moments with my mother. And I know she's crying on the other end, and I cry when I send them. But it's this practice of being in the presence of loving my life and sharing loving my life with the people that I love and care about. And it elevates their life, and they get to share it with me. So
they get to experience a bit of it with you, don't they?
Yeah.
Wow. So this is really lovely. All this that you're sharing, Lonny. So you're in love with your life, and you've been there's not been a day that's gone past since you've moved here where you haven't been kind of overwhelmed and gone to tears.
It's a practice. It's an intentional practice. I practice it. It doesn't mean every day is wonderful. Believe me, the bureaucracy here and some of the challenges.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons to be cranky and cantankerous. But if the day goes by and the day's gone by and I haven't had one of those moments, I call somebody and I share with them what I do. And I say this: there's not a day that goes by that I'm not moved to tears by the miracle of my life and the people that are in it. And I will talk until that moment happens and I experience that. And I don't stop until that's present for me. It's an intentional practice to bring present for myself love in my life and to share that with another person for a moment. And I know from the people that I do that with that it touches them, and it's just a moment, and it's they indulge my I don't know, my odd behavior.
Do you know what? I think it's one of the most sane things I've heard anyone ever say. I think that's lovely. I really do. And the fact that you've done it as an intentional, as a daily intentional action, that's a good commitment, I think. I want to ask you about how you've obviously, I mean, that intentional practice, I think, will help you to settle. because you're in a place of appreciation and gratitude for your life. But what other traits do you think you have, or actions that you've taken? What have you done that's helped you to settle into your new life and adapt to it?
Well, as you were asking the question, I was struggling with the word settled, because I'm probably the most unsettled person I know.
Okay, so maybe not settled, but how have you?
And I'm intensely not interested in being settled. I am interested in disrupting sort of this unconsciousness that just takes me over. I don't want to spend another day of my life going through the motions. I don't want another day of feeling settled. I like the disrupting myself. I discover something new about myself and the quality of life. And so but I think your point is something like, what does it look like? What does the routine look like now that you're here?
Yeah, maybe not routine, because again, I'm not one for routines. I don't really like to feel settled myself, but maybe a sense of belonging. I like to belong somewhere, but not to feel settled. Does that make sense? I mean, it's kind of
good. Well, that's a good one. That
belonging. I like to belong somewhere. I like to feel like
it's so good. It's such a we could talk for an hour about that. Because one of the work that I do with client consulting work that I do, this sense of belonging is such a fundamental I don't know what the word is for that. It's so fundamental to being a human being.
Yeah.
Like a need. I don't know about Maslow's laws or any of that, but for sure, that I go to this Fado house where no tourists used to go at all. That I was the only American, and that I was so welcomed and so included, and and I didn't realize how welcoming the Portuguese are. And just like going into a restaurant alone and people going out of their way to include you. And so one of the things that I do is that I am that I belong. I think this thing of not belonging is some lie we tell ourselves. I don't belong. I don't belong to what? The human race. It's a lie. I don't belong is some I don't know, some childhood notion we cooked up. I don't belong. I don't fit in, wherever that starts. I don't know. I think we all have to deal with that on some level. But I've had that my whole life. I've always had I don't belong because I'm an oddball. I'm an odd kid. I didn't do things the way other kids did. I didn't learn the way other kids learned. I was kind of outside of the norm. So there wasn't any way for me to even pretend to belong because I didn't. And other people made sure that I did it. They reminded me. So I got those messages early on. So I've always struggled with that sense of belonging until, so I've had that fitting in thing and belonging thing. And now I love that I don't.
Yeah.
I love, I'm attracted to oddballs, misfits, and outsiders. It was a podcast. We haven't done it, but I did a whole series of interviews. It's called Oddballs, Misfits, and Outsiders, and it was just conversations like this with this odd cast of characters in my life. And it was the punchline of the whole thing after we did about 20 of those interviews was, on some level, we're all oddballs, misfits, and outsiders. That's the joke.
Yeah, definitely. You should get that online as well.
All right, well, you can be my coach in figuring out how to do that. If it would elevate the quality of somebody's life, or we don't need another entertainment program.
I'm sure people would definitely tune in for that. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I didn't realize that I was talking about belonging in terms of settling, but when you were talking about belonging and do we need to belong, I realized I feel my greatest sense of belonging actually when I'm on my own. So, when you were talking about loneliness or versus being alone, when I'm alone, that's when I feel most connected to the world, to nature, to my existence, to where I am.
Beautiful.
And I find that sense of belonging much more maybe disturbing and distracting when I'm in groups of people. And I realize I haven't really had much of a meditative practice since I've had a family, because they're in your space. And I'm guessing as the kids grow up, I will have a bit more alone time and feel a bit more belonging back into my life. So it was interesting that you mentioned alone and belonging. Yeah. So maybe it's easier for sort of more introverted people to feel that sense of arrival, because if you have that moment of, knowing that all is well in the world when you're on your own, and that sense of security, it may come a bit sooner. I have seen quite a few noticeable extroverts really struggle being over here.
Yeah.
And being in a new environment and not having their usual sense of, I guess, safety nets and all sorts of mechanisms around them that they interact with.
The familiarity, the familiar reminders. I think it's true for everybody. I don't think I'm special, but for sure, my experience of myself is that my environment, and you sort of pointed to this earlier about different places, different languages, and how that affects you and you're different in those environments, how much one's environment shapes, colors, our ways of being and acting. We're acting in response to the people around us, the music we hear, the physical space we're in.
Yeah.
I knew a really incredible man that I met many, many, many years ago, and there's not one thing in his home, not one object that isn't important and doesn't have a story. Like the silverware it looks like silverware, but everything that he had was something that brought him joy for some reason. He loved it. He loved beauty, and it's a really incredibly creative human being. And how much our environment influences our experience of life and living.
Mm.
And so that's been important to me. It's part of what has had Porto be so compelling, and Portugal be so compelling, is this idea of a new environment without any sort of consciousness on my part would alter who I am by virtue of an entirely new environment, an entirely new language, an entirely new music, and there's nothing familiar at all.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. So I find myself pulled. I find aspects of myself, discovering aspects of myself, they're sort of being pulled out by virtue of the people I'm with, by virtue of the environment I'm in.
Mm.
So I'm interested in that sort of. It's like backwards in a certain way, kind of backwards thinking. Who am I really?
Yeah.
Well, one point of view is who you are is the company you keep.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at those questions. I'm not interested so much in answers as much as I used to be. I love the questions. I like provoking my ego and arrogance and self-importance and poking holes in all of them.
Poking a bit of fun at it. I've got a question for you then. Given that you kind of like when you came over, you didn't have any connections, you brought new things, and you did your absolute conscious best to have a brand new start. How did you relate to your old life when you went back to it? I mean, obviously it's not your old life, it's still your current life, but how was it when you went home for the first time and then reconnected with your stuff, your US identity? What was that like?
Impactful. That's a really great question. The first time I went back, I immediately noticed the lack of joy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I immediately noticed the familiarity, the mundane, the kind of a shock, honestly, of how much, because I was here for a long time before I went back.
Yeah.
I lost my passport and had to stay here for a much longer time than I had expected to. So then when I went back for a minute, 2 weeks, then came back, it was like a big adjustment.
Yeah.
Because I've been here and opening myself up and doing all this
Yes.
stuff. And then I went back, it's like, oh my God.
Mm.
I really, and I had to bump into myself there. I had to bump into, oh, no wonder I wanted to invent a new self and a new life and a new future for myself. My God, how suppressive, oh my God. There was a certain sadness about it too, because not because I regret any of it, but it was really stark. The contrast was really quite stark. And and I go back fairly often, so I get to bump into my old self again, but there's more of the new me wherever I am now, and less of getting pulled into stuff. And so that's been, this is interesting. That practice I have about there's not a day that goes by since I moved here that I'm not moved to tears by the miracle of my life. I used to think that was because I was in Porto. And then I discovered on the second trip or third trip back, because I was sharing about living in Porto, I said to a person, there's not a day that goes by since moving to Porto that I'm not moved to tears by the life I get to live. And I got moved to tears in the moment of sharing it in these shitty circumstances. And I had the recognition, oh, it has nothing to do with where you are. It has to do with this intentional practice of causing, loving my life and loving myself, and that I can bring that wherever I am in any situation. And now when I go home, I am so happy.
Yeah.
I'm so, my mother was like, oh my God, you're so happy. I said, I know, I love my life. I finally love my life. I had to move to Portugal to figure out that I really love my life. I love my life. No matter where I am, I love my life. So it's come full circle.
Yeah.
It's not the circumstances really that gives us the quality of our life. I mean, we respond, of course, we react, of course, and all that stuff's perfectly normal, but it's not the whole story. And we have much more to do with the quality of it. And I don't know. I just had a senior moment. I don't know. I just forgot what it was.
Do you know what? I just want to take us back to that old adage, wherever you go, there you are. I mean,
yeah, perfect.
That's so true.
Yeah, perfect.
Because for ages we thought, wherever you go, there you are. You catch up with yourself at some point, but maybe you always were meant to love your life and always were loving your life, and it was because you were loving your life that you created this for yourself to love it even more.
Yeah, I think there's probably more personal, probably shouldn't be broadcast, but there's at least two of me. There's the guy that loves himself and loves his life and loves humanity and loves people, and there's that guy. And there's more of that guy around than there's been for a really long time.
Yeah.
there's more of him around. But I got this other cast of characters. I have the tyrant that's always grumbling and mumbling about how awful shit is. I have that guy. And then I have the scared little kid that is all alone and terrified. And so, I don't know, I'm maybe reading too much Pessoa. I'll end up with heteronyms and a cast of characters, heteronyms, and I'll start naming them. But I like the freedom to be who I am at every moment and discover who I am in every moment and create who I am in every moment. And again, I have the opportunity to do that, and didn't know until this journey that I've always had the power and the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And had no access to it. So I love, as you know, I love sharing that possibility with people that in the most dire circumstances, situations, it's possible to love your life and invent an intentional practice.
That's so powerful. Wow. Well, Lonny, thank you so much. I feel like I've had so much of your time, and also I want to cut it short so that I can invite you back to talk more another time. I want my cake and eat it. That was just amazing. It was so much more of I knew I was going to have a great conversation with you and learn some amazing stuff. I didn't realize it was just going to touch me so deeply. It's amazing. Thank you so much. If somebody wanted to contact you, if they were listening in, maybe they wanted to find out about Porto, or maybe they want some coaching. Is that something you're open to?
I'm a hesitant. Here's why I'm hesitant. I don't want to be a tour guide. I don't want to, there's much better resources than me for discovering Porto. I would direct everybody to Good Morning Portugal and start watching it every day.
Bless you.
It's an amazing resource. It's an amazing group of people, and there's plenty of resources on the website. And that for sure is an incredible resource. And people who call me, I send them there. If you want to move to Portugal, go do your homework.
Yeah.
There's not an easy way. It's not going to be easy. And everybody's journey is different, and nobody's going to do it the way I did it. I would not recommend the way that I did it. It's what I did. Find your own way here, and use the resources that present themselves. My email address is livelonny, livelonny @gmail.com. And that would be not just to get emails, because I don't need more emails. But if there's something that I said that makes a difference in somebody's life, if it touched them in some way, I'm open to hearing about that.
Wow.
Whether I'll work with them or not, I don't know. I have a very limited space for clients. But anyway, that's. I don't want to get the wrong. I don't want to give the wrong impression.
No, I love how you explain that, actually, because you're using a lot of discernment. You've got this amazing life that you've created for yourself, and I do know that the work you do is really powerful. I'm
just protecting my time because I'm writing. I'm working on a project, and I'm writing, and I need the space and the time to do that. I'm also in love with a remarkable, incredible man, a Portuguese man I met when I first came, that is just beyond words. So I'm also protective of the little time we get to spend together. He lives in Lisbon, I live here.
Yeah.
Lastly, Louise, I just want you to know you're one of the people, you and Carl, I get to be who I am with you by virtue of who you are and the kinds of questions that you ask and the kinds of things you're interested in and the things that you pull out of me. I didn't come to this call expecting to say any of what I'm saying. And you and Carl always have a way of reaching me and making it safe for me to express myself and be myself. And I love that. I love you and I love our relationship. I'm grateful. Thanks for being part of the journey.
So there you have it. That's my conversation with Lonny. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was rather marvelous. I absolutely adored how Lonny made that decision, that very, very clear decision early on that he was just going to start afresh. So few people do that. In fact, out of all the people that I've interviewed so far, he's the only one that's actually expressed that he really wanted to leave the old Lonny behind and to kind of be playful with his experience of migration. And I absolutely honor him for that. I think that's amazing. So anyway, if you think you might like a little bit of hand holding or just a little bit of time to come into your body, come into your senses about your move, your migration, then please do, by all means, drop me a line. It's louisatunnermunson@gmail.com. You can also reach me through theportugalclub.com and also our page, goodmorningportugal.com. Both Carl and I are here to help you, to assist you in your personal move and your migration. But anyway, that's another story. Join us again next week as I bring to you another moving story, another inspiring chat with another one of our Good Morning Portugal friends. It's Heather from Boots on the Ground. Anyway, lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Lots of love. Bye for now.